Alright, so I want to discuss some of the other tools in here in HardOps. So we've already discussed these four here. We have a lot of stuff listed here under the operations panel. It looks kind of intimidating, but most of this is stuff you've seen before, and some of them are just repeats of the settings up here. I'm going to start with the ones that you probably are going to be using the most, so I'm going to kind of do the less important ones last. So arguably the most important one you'll be using in here is the Smart Apply option, which we briefly touched up on in the box cutter section. So say I have a few different boolean cuts in here, right? So maybe a boolean here, and then we'll get fancy with it and make a circle cut here. Okay? So you're going to, actually let's add a bevel as well, just for good measure. Okay, you're going to see we have, our booleans in here, right? 1, 2, 3, and we have our bevel. And obviously, whenever we have bevels in the scene, rarely do we want to apply the bevels because, let me show you an example. If you're somewhat new to hard surface, a reason we might not want to apply a bevel is because, I'm trying to make an artifact on purpose. The one time I want to make an artifact, I can't. Okay, here we go. So the one reason you don't want to necessarily apply your bevels is because if you apply the bevel, right? If we go in here and apply it, actually, we'll just apply everything, why not? So if we apply everything, you're going to see to clean up this mess in here is a big pain. You have to slide over a bunch of stuff. You have to get this one in the right position and deal with the entire bevel. Not only that, you're also not going to be able to adjust the bevel size ever again because you baked the bevel. So usually you want to leave the bevel modifier live in the stack. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this. So if I were to apply all the booleans and leave the bevel, you're going to see it's much easier to clean up this artifact here because all I really have to do is, manage it a bit more manually this way, and we don't have to go through the entire bevel segment. So in general in hard surface, especially if you've done it before, you never really want to apply your bevel modifiers. So for this reason we have Smart Apply, because most of the time we want to apply our booleans so that way we can get in here and actually fix some of the problems like we did right here, but we still want to leave the bevel modifier live in the stack. So instead of going in here and applying all the booleans individually, which could be a pain if you have like 20 booleans or more, what you can actually do is go over here to the Smart Apply option under operations and just click on that. If you hover over the Smart Apply, you'll see exactly what this does. So by default, just clicking it applies the modifiers in the stack except the bevel and the weighted normal. So if you have a bevel or weighted normal in the stack, those two will not be applied. Generally, I don't use the weighted normal too much because I can just use the hardened normal option in the bevel modifier, but sometimes you might want to use a weighted normal as well. So basically, if you want to quickly apply your booleans, or if you have a mirror in the stack or whatever, you can just go in here and simply apply a Smart Apply basically. And it also applies mirrors and things like that. Like I said, if you run a Smart Apply, all that stuff is going to be applied, but the bevel will remain. Now there are some other options in here for Smart Apply. There's a bunch of different ones, 3 as a matter of fact. If you shift click on Smart Apply, what this does is it basically applies every modifier, but it deletes the bevel and weighted normal. It doesn't apply it, it deletes it. So it basically just goes in here, applies all the booleans, and then deletes the bevel so that way there's no bevel at all. And let me show you why you might want to do this. So say for example you wanted to access a specific piece of geometry on here. You wanted to, I don't know, maybe make like a plating effect around the side. Well, an easy way to do that without having to go into your original model here is you can actually just go into your Smart Apply, shift click it, it's going to apply the booleans, and then remove the bevel and weighted normal, and also make a duplicate of this piece. And you're going to see now we basically have all the booleans applied, the bevels removed, and a duplicate. So what I could basically do is go in here and select some areas that I want to steal from, and maybe we'll invert the selection. There is a quicker way to do this, we'll discuss it a bit later, but I could invert the selection, delete it, and then maybe add in like a solidify or something cool like this. And basically, this is a quick and easy way to make cool plating effects on your models without having to affect the original model here. And I use this one all the time, Smart Apply Duplicate, just because sometimes I want to steal some of the geometry to make cool little effects around certain areas of the original mesh. Now there are some other settings for the rest of the Smart Apply. Truth be told, I don't use any of these other settings, the control click or the alt click, simply because they're separate tools to do that. Generally, you're using Smart Apply to either apply your booleans, or you're using Smart Apply Duplicate to duplicate this piece, apply the booleans, and then clear your bevel out. The other two we'll be discussing later on as a separate tool. Alright, I want to discuss the mod scroll option. This one is one of the most powerful tools of HardOps, and you'll see why in a second. So say I had like, I don't know, a bunch of cutters on here. I'm just probably going to do a few for example, but you know, the same idea applies if you have a ton of cutters. So maybe I have, you know, a good amount of cutters on this object, and I want to scroll through the different cutters. Maybe I want to reposition this one right here, or perhaps delete it out, or just find out the name of this cutter for whatever reason we might need that for. There's a really easy way to do that, and usually what you'd have to do is go up here to the stack and just kind of enable it one by one until you find it, and that's a pain. Or what you could have done is, you know, turn these off manually and turn them back on until you found it. It's an absolute pain to do it that way. It's a lot slower. I'd rather just scroll through the different booleans in here, and all you have to do that is go to the Q menu, click on mod scroll, and scroll up or down on your scroll wheel. So if I wanted to, I don't know, move this boolean cut right here away, rather than going and trying to guess which cutter this is, right? It's just annoying to do. I just go in here and I go to mod scroll and I scroll through until I find it. And you're also going to see in the bottom left, it also highlights the active one you have selected. So in this case, this one is affecting boolean 003, and you know, I can just move this around, reposition it, hide the cutters collection, and I am good to go. Mod scroll has a few other functionalities as well if you hover over it. One of my favorite ones is the shift click. That way you can actually see this piece being built up based off of your booleans here. So if I wanted to basically hide all the booleans and scroll through them one by one, I can just go in here and shift click, and you're going to see if I scroll up, it'll slowly start applying, or rather enabling, the booleans over here so I can see it get built up and non-destructively. So that's pretty cool. There are also a few other options in here which we could go over. I don't really use them too much, but if you control click, this will basically turn all the modifiers off or all the modifiers on. Really easy. In the last section here, or last setting rather, is the Smart Apply option. So we already discussed Smart Apply in the last video. Basically, if you just alt click on mod scroll, this will apply a Smart Apply for you. There's also another option here for control shift click. I think this one just does the same thing. I don't really know why there's two separate settings for Smart Apply, but evidently you can use either keybind. You can either alt click it or control shift click it. Does the same thing basically. And I do want to mention that whenever you have all your booleans applied, there's nothing to scroll through, right? You've already applied your booleans. There's not really anything to scroll through. So you're going to notice that that mod scroll option will actually go away, and it will be replaced by the mirror and array option, which, like we discussed before, we don't use this. We simply press the Alt X key for mirror. So that's it for mod scroll. Super easy to understand, and you'll be using it a ton. In this video, I'm going to introduce the step bevel option, which I don't personally use a ton, but there is a reason I want to introduce it, so just bear with me. So say we have a cut in the box here, or really for anything, but you know, we have a cut and we have a pretty big bevel on it, right? I'm also going to drop a weighted normals, and you'll see why in a second. But yeah, we just drop a weighted normals and now we have a nice bevel here, right? No big deal. Now let's say I add an additional cut in here. You're going to see all that really does is it picks up the additional bevel that we already added in. Very simple. But what if I wanted to make this secondary cut have a smaller size bevel? Well, to do this, we can actually use the step bevel option. So if I go over here, I'm going to actually undo this cut. If I go over here to the operations panel and click on step and try to add in a new cut, and by the way, whenever I click on step, it adds in this new bevel right here. If I try to add in a new cut, you're going to see we have a much tinier bevel on this one. And basically what's happening is it's taking this bevel amount and dividing it by 2. It's taking 50% of the width amount of the original bevel. So this bevel is half the size of this one basically. And this can be useful for all sorts of reasons. If you just want to have different levels of bevels, it can be pretty useful for that. And as you can see, wherever I cut through, we basically have the same thing. Now I could do it again if I wanted to, but we're going to have a really tiny bevel if I do another one. As you can see, this one's super tiny, and I could even push it further with another one to the point where you can barely even notice a difference. And that's basically all step bevel is doing. Now the reason I used a way to normal here is pretty obvious. Let me just do a new cube to show you. So if I used a hard to normals option instead, I just cut in here and run a bevel and press the N key to run the hard to normals this way. If I try to run a step bevel, you're going to see, if I go to step, we get issues. This is basically like a double overlap with hard to normals, and usually those don't work very well together. So we can fix that by simply turning off all of the hard to normals options in our bevel modifiers and letting the whole thing be controlled by a single way to normal modifier instead. So we'll just make sure both of these are turned off, and then what we can do is add a way to normal. Now there is a way to add a way to normal quicker. If we alt click on the sharpen option, this will add a way to normal, as you can see. Now I have had a lot of trouble with this way to normal option in hard ops, but it's mainly because it keeps this keep sharp option turned on by default. I don't really like that setting, but you can just turn it off. So yeah, that's basically why I would use a way to normal instead of a hard to normal in this case. So that's basically all a step bevel is doing. It allows you to have multiple levels of bevels all at once, and it's just a pretty useful tool. And just for some back-end understanding of how this is working, I'll go ahead and show you. So what we have right here is a single boolean, right? And then we're applying a bevel, and then we're applying another boolean right here, and then we're applying an additional bevel which is occurring after this boolean, as you can see. And that's why we're actually able to have a different level, because this bevel right here is only affecting this boolean, and this bevel right here is only affecting this boolean basically. And you might be thinking, well, why isn't this bevel also picking up the boolean up here, because it's above this bevel? You'd think that after this one is already executed, then this bevel would pick up on both of them, right? Well, the reason it's only picking up on the one here on the bottom is because we have the angle limit method set by default, as you can see. The limit method set to angle, and this bevel is not within that threshold, so that's why it's not occurring. But if I were to maybe adjust the angle amount, then you're going to see it'll actually start applying an additional bevel on the original bevel. So that's why you can kind of combine different booleans and bevel angles to kind of get cool looking things like this. Without confusing you too much, that's basically what the step bevel does, and it's a pretty useful tool. So this next one is going to be pretty simple and quick. It's called clear sharp. If you go to the operations panel, as you can see, what this does is it basically removes the modifiers and resets the mesh to flat shading. But it also removes any sort of sharpen parameters like crease, seam, bevel weight, sharp, things like that. So as you can see here, what I have is a baked boolean, and I also have a bunch of sharpen edges around it, bevel weights and sharps, as determined by the sharp options parameter here. Okay, so if I go over here to clear sharp, what it's going to do is going to remove the bevel, remove any other modifiers like the boolean, this boolean we have live in here, and it's also going to remove those sharpening parameters. So if I go in here and do that, you're going to see it did everything. It also made it flat shading, and it also removed all the sharp options in there. Now you probably won't do this too much, but it can be useful if you ever need to do something like this. So here's some additional thoughts. So if we go to the operations panel, you're going to see a lot of these are repeats of what we already have accessible to us via the regular panel. So mod scroll can be accessed here or in here. We can also access sharpen in here or up here, and we can also access mirror and array and adding in camera and lights and things like that, just like we can in the regular Blender setup. So for that reason, it would be kind of redundant to go over these same tools again when they literally do the same exact thing as what we've already discussed in other videos. It's simply just easier to access some of these options if you're already in this panel, so those options are available. So I just wanted to make a quick remark about that. So some of these, yes, we won't discuss because we've already discussed them.